Maya Bennett was a 32-year-old woman with a past that spoke of courage and resilience. As a former soldier who had served 8 intense years in the Middle East, Clara had faced challenges most people couldn't fathom. After leaving the military 4 years ago, she decided it was time to return to her roots in Cedarvale, a quaint town nestled in the countryside where she had grown up. Maya Bennett was a 32-year-old woman with a past that spoke. Here, Clara sought a life of simplicity and peace, hoping to leave the chaos of the battlefield behind. She lived in a modest home on the outskirts of town, surrounded by the serenity of nature. Despite her quiet life, Clara remained connected to her past, regularly attending meetings with the local community of veterans. Here, Clara sought a life of simplicity and peace, hoping to. These gatherings allowed her to share experiences and find camaraderie with those who understood her journey. Yet, Clara wasn't one to remain idle. Lately, she had been considering a new role for herself, joining the Cedarvale Police Department. These gatherings allowed her to share experiences and find her military training and strategic mind seemed like a perfect fit for a job that required discipline and sharp instinct. Clara wanted to contribute more actively to her community, and the idea of wearing the badge appealed to her sense of purpose. Cedarvale itself was a picturesque town, the kind of place where neighbors knew each other by name and the streets felt safe, at least until recently. Her military training and strategic mind seemed like a perfect. For decades, it had been a haven of tranquility, with its tidy homes, family-run businesses, and a strong sense of community. However, a shadow had begun to loom over Cedar. The Steel Zane Wolves, a notorious biker gang, had arrived, turning the town's peace into unease. For decades, it had been a haven of tranquility. With its tyrant, their presence was marked by intimidation, demands for protection money from local businesses, and a growing tension that gripped the townsfolk. Clara could feel the unrest, and deep down she knew she couldn't ignore it. That morning, the sun hung low in the sky, casting gentle rays through the windows of Sophie's diner. Their presence was marked by intimidation, demands for protection. Maya Bennett, still slightly groggy, stepped inside the cozy establishment and inhaled the warm scent of freshly brewed coffee. She made her way to her usual table near the counter, the worn wooden furniture creaking softly beneath her weight. As she sat down, the diner was modest, with simple decor and a handful of tables and chairs that had seen better days. Maya Bennett, still slightly groggy, stepped inside the cozy. But to Clara, these imperfections only added to its charm. She liked the place precisely because it was unpretentious, just like Anna Collins, the owner. Sophie, with her ever-present apron and a welcoming smile, bustled back and forth between the tables, chatting with customers as she refilled mugs and took orders. But to Clara, these imperfections only added to its charm. The clinking of cutlery, the gentle hum of conversation, and the sizzle of bacon on the grill, all blended into a soundtrack of small-town morning life. Clara found it soothing to observe the easy routines of Cedarvale's residents. Here, she could temporarily forget about her years in the military and all the horrors that service had entailed. The clinking of cutlery, the gentle hum of conversation, and as Clara settled into her seat, she offered a polite wave to a couple of regulars and gave Sophie a nod of greeting. "The usual?" Sophie asked from behind the counter. Her voice barely audible over the. Sophie winked as she scribbled the order on a notepad and hurried away, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts. It was a bright day, the sky a clear expanse of blue. As Clara settled into her seat, she offered a polite wave to any other morning. The diner would be filled with lively chatter, neighbors discussing weekend plans, retired folks gossiping about the local news, and the occasional banter about Cedarvale's modest happening. But the moment the door swung open with a resounding clang, the atmosphere took a sharp turn. 2 men walked in, and it was impossible not to notice them. Derek Stone and Zane Wolf, members of the Steel Zane Wolf's biker gang. On any other morning, the diner would be filled with Their heavy boots thudded against the linoleum floor. Both wore black leather jackets emblazoned with the gang's emblem, and the hardened expressions on their faces spelled trouble. The warmth of Sophie's diner evaporated in an instant as all eyes turned to the newcomers. Their heavy boots thudded against the linoleum floor. Both weaponization died, and the hiss of the grill seemed to grow louder by comparison. Zane Wolf, shorter but wiry, scanned the room with a predatory gleam in his eyes. He appeared to relish the sudden hush that their entrance had caused. Conversation died, and the hiss of the grill seemed to grow. Meanwhile, Derek Stone, tall and broad-shouldered, radiated a confidence bordering on arrogance. He took one sweeping look around before locking his gaze on Sophie, who stood behind the counter, her face gone pale. Without any preamble, Derek Stone strode forward, the worn leather of his jacket creaking with each step. Meanwhile, Derek Stone, tall and broad-shouldered, radiated mourning. He drawled, voice low. "We've got business to settle, Sophie. You know why I'm here." Mourning, he drawled, voice low. "We've got business to settle, Sophie." He tapped his fingers on the counter, each movement slow and deliberate, conveying the raw power he held, power that came from intimidation. Sophie swallowed hard, her hands trembling faintly as she clutched the edge of the counter. "Derek Stone, I just need a little more time," she stammered. He tapped his fingers on the counter, each movement slow, and a few customers who'd been lingering over their breakfasts hurriedly dropped money on their tables and slipped toward the door. Derek Stone's lips curled into a cruel smirk. "We gave you time." A few customers who'd been lingering over their breakfasts, Zane Wolfe, who had stationed himself near the entrance, locked eyes with one of Sophie's servers, causing the server to practically shrink back and flee to the kitchen. "Now we want payment. You're late." Zane Wolfe, who had stopped. The tension in the air intensified with every passing second. Sophie tried to maintain composure, but it was clear she was terrified. I don't have enough right now," she managed, voice trembling. The tension in the air intensified with every passing second. "Business has been slow. I can pay some next week." "Not good enough," Derek Stone interrupted. His tone was harsh, each word laced with contempt. "We don't do partial payments, Sophie. Business has been slow. I can pay some next week." "Not good. Either you have our money, or you deal with the consequences." At that moment, Clara set down her mug. She had been observing quietly, taking in the scene with the calm detachment she had learned in the military. "Either you have our money, or you deal with the consequences." But as Sophie's knuckles turned white against the countertop, Clara decided she couldn't stay silent any longer. Rising from her chair, Clara made her way toward the center of the diner. "Why don't you leave her alone?" she said evenly, her voice carrying enough clarity to make Derek Stone shift his attention. But as Sophie's knuckles turned white against the countertop, the patrons who hadn't already fled seemed caught between relief that someone had spoken up and fear of how the bikers might react. Derek Stone lifted an eyebrow, a flash of annoyance on his face. The interruption clearly wasn't welcome. The patrons who hadn't already fled seemed caught between "Who the hell are you, lady?" he muttered, half laughing as though he found her intervention mildly amusing. Clara kept her stance steady. "Just a customer who doesn't appreciate bullying," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "Who the hell are you, lady?" he muttered, half laughing as though, "You should go." Now, for a moment, the diner seemed frozen in time. "You should go." Now, for a moment, the diner seemed frozen in Sophie looked at Clara with a mixture of hope and dread. Zane Wolfe tensed, poised like a snake ready to strike. Derek Stone let out a short, derisive laugh. Sophie looked at Clara with a mixture of hope and dread. "Zane, a feisty little thing," he said. "You must be new around here if you think telling me to leave is enough." Clara exhaled slowly. "Aren't you a feisty little thing?" he said. "You must be new or..." Her training taught her to remain calm under pressure. "I'm not new," she said, voice dropping in volume, but gaining in resolve. "And I can tell you this, if you lay another finger on anyone in this diner, we're going to have a big problem." Her training taught her to remain calm under pressure. "I'm not new." Zane Wolfe, who'd been lingering near the door, decided he'd heard enough. "You think you can handle us?" he sneered, stepping forward. "Derek Stone's being nice, but me, I ain't nice." Zane Wolfe, who'd been lingering near the door, decided he'd do. Derek Stone, for his part, was taken aback by Clara's bravado. There was something about her stance, the way she held herself, that suggested she wasn't just a random diner customer playing hero. He cocked his head, studying her. Derek Stone, for his part, was taken aback by Clara's bravado. "You've got guts, lady," he admitted, "but I doubt you know who you're dealing with." Clara, unflinching, simply answered, "No, I doubt you know who you're dealing with." A tense silence enveloped the diner. "You've got guts, lady," he admitted, "but I doubt you know who." Sophie cast frantic glances between Clara and Derek Stone, visibly torn between admiration for Clara's courage and fear of how the bikers would react. The atmosphere felt charged, as though one wrong move might set off an explosion of violence. When Derek Stone leaned in closer, fists clenching, Clara spoke again. Sophie cast frantic glances between Clara and Derek Stone. "Vince, I don't need to be anybody special," she said, voice quiet yet firm. "But if you don't back off, this isn't going to end well for you." Her statement caused Derek Stone to hesitate, if only for a sec. Something about her calmness and steady gaze made him wonder what lay beneath the surface. "I don't need to be anybody special," she said, voice quiet yet. But Zane Wolfe broke that fleeting pause by snorting derisively. "She's just mouthy, boss. Let's teach her a lesson." But Zane Wolfe broke that fleeting pause by snorting derisive. Emboldened by Zane Wolfe's provocation, Derek Stone's face hardened, and he stepped forward. "All right, you asked for this," he growled. Without warning, Zane Wolfe lunged at Clara. Emboldened by Zane Wolfe's provocation, Derek Stone's face hot. Time seemed to slow for Clara. She saw the telegraphed motion of Zane Wolfe's arms as he aimed to grab her. In a swift maneuver, she sidestepped, hooking her leg behind his to disrupt his balance. Time seemed to slow for Clara. She saw the telegraphed motion. With both arms, she channeled his momentum downward. Zane Wolfe's body slammed onto the floor, causing a collective gasp from the remaining patrons. Clara's training was evident in the efficiency of her movements, quick, precise, and confident. With both arms, she channeled his momentum downward. Zane Wolfe lay sprawled, momentarily stunned. But that single moment of victory for Clara ended abruptly when Derek Stone joined the fray. He rushed her with surprising speed for a man of his size. Zane Wolfe lay sprawled, momentarily stunned. But that single Clara whirled, attempting to dodge, but he was too close. She managed to land one punch on his shoulder, but his raw power overwhelmed her. Clara whirled, attempting to dodge, but he was too close. Derek Stone wrapped a muscular arm around her waist, lifting her momentarily off the floor. She twisted, trying to free herself, but his strength was immense. He managed to plant a well-aimed strike across her cheek. Derek Stone wrapped a muscular arm around her waist. Lifting pain exploded behind her eyes as she stumbled backward. A second blow from Derek Stone landed, a heavy fist to the side of her jaw, and she collapsed onto the diner's checkered floor tile. Everything felt disoriented, as though the world tilted beneath her. Pain exploded behind her eyes as she stumbled backward. A sucker head rang from the impact, and she struggled to regain her bearings. The taste of copper spread in her mouth, and her vision blurred at the edge. Derek Stone towered over her, fists still clenched, chest heaving. Her head rang from the impact, and she struggled to regain it. For a split second, it looked as though he might strike her again, but instead, he smirked. "You should have stayed quiet," he hit. Then he crouched down, close enough that Clara could smell the stale scent of leather and cigarettes. For a split second, it looked as though he might strike her. His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "This is just a warning. Next time, you won't be so lucky." His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "This is just a warning." Clara struggled to focus on him, refusing to show weakness despite the throbbing pain. Her breath was ragged, but she met his gaze defiantly. Clara struggled to focus on him, refusing to show weakness despite. Satisfied that he'd made his point, Derek Stone stood up and turned to Zane Wolfe, who had recovered and was leaning against a table, wincing from his earlier fall. "Come on," Derek Stone barked. "Let's go." It seems Clara has stepped into an uneven confrontation. Satisfied that he'd made his point, Derek Stone stood up and, "What do you think about Clara's courageous actions? If it were you, would you have acted like Clara?" Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more action-packed stories and updates. Now let's get back to the story. What do you think about Clara's courageous actions? If it were Zane Wolfe shot a hateful glare at Clara, then limped toward the door. With the two of them gone, the diner's silence was deafening. It was as though everyone collectively held their breath, waiting to be sure the bikers had truly left. Zane Wolfe shot a hateful glare at Clara, then limped toward. Finally, someone rushed forward to help Clara. A waitress peered out from the kitchen, eyes wide with concern. Sophie hurried over, tears shimmering on her lashes. Finally, someone rushed forward to help Clara. A waitress. "Oh God, Clara, are you all right?" she asked, voice quivering. Clara pressed a hand to her cheek, testing the swelling. The pain made her draw a sharp breath, but she forced a reassuring nod. "Oh God, Clara, are you all right?" she asked, voice quivering. "I've had worse," she managed, though her body protested every small movement. The few remaining patrons hovered nearby, admiration and shock mingling on their faces. One older man ventured, "That was incredibly brave. I've had worse," she managed, though her body protested every. "You sure you don't need a hospital?" "I'll be fine," Clara said, though she wasn't entirely certain. In truth, her jaw and ribs ached, and her vision still swam. But she refused to let that show any more than it already did. "You sure you don't need a hospital?" "I'll be fine," Clara said. Sophie's expression was a mixture of gratitude and guilt. "Clara, I'm so sorry you got hurt because of me. I didn't mean to." Sophie's expression was a mixture of gratitude and guilt. "Clara, I'm not your fault," Clara interrupted softly. "Those men can't be allowed to run this town. They're bullies. Worse than bullies." "Not your fault," Clara interrupted softly. "Those men can't be." The moment she said it, a hush fell over the diner again. Everyone understood the weight of her words. The Steel Vipers had grown bolder over the past months, demanding protection money from small businesses and terrorizing those who refused. Cedarvale had always been known as a peaceful place, and these bikers were turning it into a realm of fear. The moment she said it, a hush fell over the diner again. Clara glanced around, noticing the fear etched into every face. That fear was what had made so many people scurry out at the first sign of trouble, but it also made them powerless. Clara glanced around, noticing the fear etched into every face. Sophie and another diner regular helped her to her feet. She could see herself in their eyes, a newcomer who dared to. Pain throbbed in her jaw, and she could only imagine the bruises that would form by tomorrow. One of the teenage waitresses crept out from the kitchen. "That was incredible," she whispered, her voice full of awe. Pain throbbed in her jaw, and she could only imagine the bruise. "The way you took down that guy, but that other one, he was so strong." Clara simply nodded. "Yes, he was," she said, her voice low. "The way you took down that guy, but that other one, he was so strong." The memory of Derek Stone's fist connecting with her face was still too fresh, her pride and her body aching alike. Sophie glanced at the shattered glass on the floor, some left over from a knocked-over glass, and the uneasy hush inside the diner. "I'll have to close up for the day," she murmured, a hint of defeat in her tone. The memory of Derek Stone's fist connecting with her face. "What? But who's going to want to come in after this?" Clara placed a gentle hand on Sophie's arm. "People will come back," she said, trying to reassure her. "Not everyone is going to let fear win. Who's going to want to come in after this?" Clara placed a jang. Inside, though, Clara wondered if her words were more hope than certainty. She inhaled, the metallic taste of her own blood still in her mouth, and forced herself to stand straighter. She picked up her jacket from the back of the chair, wincing at the movement. Inside, though, Clara wondered if her words were more hope. "I need to go," she told Sophie. "But listen, if those guys come back, call me. Or call the police. I need to go," she told Sophie. "But listen, if those guys come, don't try to face them alone. We need to stand together if we're going to stop them." Sophie nodded. "Don't try to face them alone. We need to stand together if we're—" "I will," she said, though the fear in her eyes suggested she wasn't fully convinced. "Thank you, Clara, for everything." Clara gave a brief smile in return, though it hurt her split lip to do so. "I will," she said, though the fear in her eyes suggested she— The morning light felt harsh now, and her head pounded with each heartbeat. With that, she made her way toward the door. She could feel, as she walked away from Sophie's diner, she replayed the confrontation in her mind. The moment Zane Wolfe tried to grab her, the way Derek Stone had overpowered her with raw strength. The humiliation stung as badly as the physical pain. As she walked away from Sophie's diner, she replayed the cont. But deeper than all that, there was a simmering determination. If this was how Steel Zane Wolfe's treated people, she was sure it wouldn't be the last time she'd come face to face with them. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she recalled the reason she'd returned to Cedarvale, the hope of finding peace. But deeper than all that, there was a simmering determination. But now, it seemed as if her peace would only come if she confronted those who were disturbing it. Clara had learned long ago that bullies didn't stop just because you asked them to. Sometimes they had to be shown their limit. But now, it seemed as if her peace would only come if She paused by a lamp post, bracing herself, as a wave of dizziness washed over her. Once it passed, she touched her cheek gingerly. Anger flared within her. She paused by a lamp post, bracing herself, as a wave of dizzy, not just at Derek Stone and Zane Wolfe, but at the idea that they could saunter into a diner in broad daylight and terrorize innocent people. She knew she had the skills to fight back. She just needed a better plan, and perhaps more backup. Clara pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling slightly, and dialed Liam Harper, her husband and Cedarvale's police chief. Not just at Derek Stone and Zane Wolfe, but at the idea that the phone rang twice before Ethan's deep, steady voice answered. "Clara, everything okay?" Clara took a moment to steady herself before replying, though her voice carried the weight of what had just happened. "Not exact. I just had a run-in with a guy named Derek Stone, the big one, the leader of the Steel Zane Wolfe." The phone rang twice before Ethan's deep, steady voice answered. Ethan's tone immediately sharpened, laced with concern. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "I'll be fine," Clara said, though her hand instinctively touched the swollen side of her face. "That brute showed up demanding money from Sophie." Ethan's tone immediately sharpened, laced with concern. "What, he got aggressive? And well, I stepped in." Ethan exhaled audibly, his worry mingling with frustration. "He got aggressive, and well, I stepped in." Ethan exhaled. "Clara, he hit me." "Ethan," she interrupted, her tone firm. "And this wasn't just a shakedown. This was about control." "Clara, he hit me." "Ethan," she interrupted, her tone firm. "And that thug wasn't just intimidating Sophie. He thinks he owns this town." Ethan paused, his silence carrying the weight of his restrained anger. When he spoke again, his voice was tight. "That thug wasn't just intimidating Sophie. He thinks he owns." "I'm sorry that happened, Clara. You shouldn't have had to deal with that." "What exactly did this rogue guy say?" "He called it a warning," Clara replied. "I'm sorry that happened, Clara. You shouldn't have had to but you and I both know it's more than that. This is only going to get worse." Ethan's frustration was evident now, though he tried to keep his voice measured. "But you and I both know it's more than that. This is only I've been tracking the Steel Zane Wolves for months. But this, attacking you in broad daylight, that's a step too far. They've crossed the line." "They crossed it a long time ago," Clara said bluntly. "I've been tracking the Steel Zane Wolves for months. But Ethan, they're not just scaring people anymore. They're taking control, and they're doing it out in the open. If we don't act soon, the whole town will be under their thumb." "Ethan, they're not just scaring people anymore. They're attacking." Ethan sighed heavily, and Clara could picture him running a hand through his hair, his usual habit when trying to hold back his temper. "You're right," he said after a moment. "I'll push harder on this." Ethan sighed heavily, and Clara could picture him running "I'll call for backup from the county and start digging deeper into their operations." "But Clara," his voice softened, almost pleading, "you need to be careful." "I'll call for backup from the county and start digging deeper, and I can't have you getting caught in the middle of this again." Clara straightened her back, her resolve only growing stronger. "I'm not the type to sit on the sidelines, Ethan. I can't have you getting caught in the middle of this again." "You know that." "I do," Ethan admitted, his tone laced with both admiration and worry. "That's what makes me nervous." "You know that." "I do," Ethan admitted, his tone laced with but. "Then let me help," Clara said firmly. "I can do more than just stay at home and wait for you to fix everything. I've been trained for situations like this, Ethan." "Then let me help," Clara said firmly. "I can do more than just—" "You know I have." Ethan hesitated, and Clara could feel his internal struggle through the phone. After a pause, he said, "We'll talk about it when I get home." "You know I have." Ethan hesitated, and Clara could feel his eye. "For now, just promise me you'll take it easy tonight." Clara sighed, but she agreed for the moment. "Fine, for now, just promise me you'll take it easy tonight." "Clara, but Ethan, understand this. I'm not going to let them scare us. This is our town too." "I know," Ethan replied, "but Ethan, understand this. I'm not going to let them scare us, and we'll deal with them together." As the call ended, Clara stared. "And we'll deal with them together." As the call ended, Clara, at the darkened screen of her phone, her jaw throbbing with every heartbeat. The encounter with Derek Stone, the towering thug who led the Steel Zane Wolves, was fresh in her mind. She knew Ethan was trying to protect her, but the Steel Zane Wolves weren't going to wait for anyone to act. At the darkened screen of her phone, her jaw throbbing with something had to be done, and soon. Liam Harper, the police chief of Cedarvale, had long harbored suspicions about the Steel Zane Wolves and their involvement in illegal activities like drug trafficking and arms smuggling. However, suspicion alone wasn't enough. Something had to be done, and soon. Liam Harper, the police, without solid evidence or credible witnesses willing to testify, His hands were tied. The biker gang had created a culture of fear in the town, intimidating anyone who dared to stand against them. Businesses quietly paid protection money, and those who didn't often found themselves victims of vandalism or worse, without solid evidence or credible witnesses willing to test it. The residents of Cedarvale were too terrified to come forward, leaving Ethan's investigation stalled in frustration. The incident at Sophie's diner, however, changed everything. When Ethan heard about what had happened to Clara, how the gang's leader, Derek Stone, had brazenly assaulted his wife in public, it became clear to him that the Steelzane Wolfes were escalating their operation. The residents of Cedarvale were too terrified to come forward. Their boldness signaled a growing confidence that no one could stop them, and Ethan knew the town couldn't afford his hesitation any longer. The time for patience had run out. Determined to dismantle the gang's grip on Cedarvale, Ethan decided to take action. Their boldness signaled a growing confidence that no one could. He resolved to break the silence that had shackled the town for too long. Leveraging Clara's connections and his authority, Ethan began devising a strategy to gather evidence and find allies willing to fight back. The Steelzane Wolfes had crossed a line, and Ethan wasn't about to let them win. He resolved to break the silence that had shackled the town. Clara knew that fear had silenced many in Cedarvale, but she also understood that trust could be a powerful tool. Leveraging her close relationships within the community, particularly with fellow veterans and longtime residents, she began quietly reaching out to those she believed might be willing to share their experiences. Her calm demeanor and reputation as someone who stood up for others made her a natural confidant. Clara knew that fear had silenced many in Cedarvale, but people who had been too afraid to speak to the police found it easier to open up to Clara. She wasn't just asking questions, she was listening, empathizing, and reassuring them that they weren't alone. Slowly but surely, stories began to surface. People who had been too afraid to speak to the police found. Local business owners described being cornered by the Steelzane Wolfes, forced to pay protection money under the threat of having their stores vandalized. Farmers spoke of stolen equipment, while residents recounted nights of revving motorcycles and shattered windows as warnings. One elderly couple, hesitant at first, finally admitted to witnessing suspicious deliveries being made under the cover of darkness at an old warehouse outside town. Local business owners described being cornered by the steel. Clara meticulously gathered every detail, carefully connecting the dots and building a clearer picture of how the gang operated. The information she collected painted a disturbing image of a group that wasn't just terrorizing the town, but was also deeply entrenched in larger criminal enterprises. When she presented her findings to Ethan, his expression was a mix of pride and determination. Clara meticulously gathered every detail, carefully connected. Her efforts provided crucial insights into the Steelzane Wolfes patterns, revealing potential locations and contacts that had previously been overlooked. Together, Clara and Ethan began piecing together a plan, using her newfound intel to take their fight against the gang to the next level. The community's trust in Clara had opened doors, and now they had the tools to strike back. Her efforts provided crucial insights into the Steelzane Wolf. During a routine patrol one quiet evening, Liam Harper's attention was drawn to raised voices at a gas station on the outskirts of Cedarvale. Pulling his cruiser into the lot, he spotted two men in Steelzane Wolfes jackets, harassing a young attendant. One of them had a menacing smirk as he leaned over the counter, slamming his fist to emphasize a demand, while the other circled back toward the employee's car, his hand. During a routine patrol one quiet evening, Liam Harper's clutching a crowbar. Ethan didn't hesitate. He stepped out of his vehicle, his presence immediately drawing the biker's attention. Clutching a crowbar, Ethan didn't hesitate.
He stepped out of his vehicle, his presence immediately drawing the biker's attention. Clutching a crowbar, Ethan didn't hesitate. He stepped out as doing outrageous. There a problem here? Ethan called out, his voice calm but carrying the authority of someone who wouldn't back down. The two bikers froze for a moment, their bravado wavering as they sized him up. The one with the crowbar sneered, trying to recover his composure. Is there a problem here? Ethan called out, his voice calm but, no problem, officer. Just having a friendly chat. That what you call it? Ethan replied coolly, his hand hovering near his holstered weapon. No problem, officer. Just having a friendly chat. That what you call it? They want me to unlock the till. Before the attendant could finish, the biker by the counter stepped forward. Because it sure doesn't look that way to me. The youngerette, shut up, he barked. But the movement was all Ethan needed. With practiced efficiency, Ethan drew his weapon and commanded, hands where I can see them, both of you. Shut up, he barked. But the movement was all Ethan needed.
Now, the bikers hesitated, but Ethan's unwavering tone left no room for argument. Within minutes, he had both men in handcuffs and secured in the back of his cruiser. Now, the bikers hesitated, but Ethan's unwavering tone left back at the station. Ethan began questioning the two bikers. They were defiant at first, trading insults and denying any wrongdoing. But as the hours stretched on and Ethan's probing became more pointed, their resolve began to crack. Back at the station, Ethan began questioning the two bikers. Bit by bit, they revealed snippets of information. One of them, clearly nervous about crossing their leader, muttered, "We don't know much. We're just told what to do. Pick up a package here. Drop it there." Bit by bit, they revealed snippets of information. One of them, Ethan pressed harder, finally extracting something more significant. "Who's giving the orders?" he asked. "Derek Stone," the taller biker finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan pressed harder, finally extracting something more. Ethan asked, his tone sharpening. "Everything comes from him. He's the boss. And where's this boss?" The biker hesitated, then let slip an old warehouse just outside town. "But that's all I know, I swear." Ethan leaned back in his chair, processing the information. The biker hesitated, then let slip an old warehouse. Just the mention of the warehouse piqued his interest. It could be a crucial link in unraveling their network. But he also knew that arresting two of their members wouldn't go unnoticed. The Steel Zane Wolfies weren't just a band of unruly bikers. Derek Stone would see this as a provocation, and retaliation was almost guaranteed. After locking the two bikers in holding cells, Ethan grabbed his phone and called Clara. "We've got a situation," he began, quickly summarizing what had happened. Derek Stone would see this as a provocation and retaliation. Clara listened intently, her voice calm but edged with concern. "Derek Stone's not going to let this slide," she said. "You know that, right?" "I do," Ethan replied. Clara listened intently, her voice calm but edged with concern. "That's why I'm letting you know now. Be ready for anything." "I'm always ready," Clara said firmly. "That's why I'm letting you know now. Be ready for anything." Ethan allowed himself a small smile at her confidence, though the weight of the coming confrontation pressed heavily on his mind. The Steel Zane Wolfies wouldn't take this lying down, and the next move they made could escalate things further. Ethan knew the stakes had just been raised, and this time there would be no room for mistakes. Ethan allowed himself a small smile at her confidence. The moonless sky cast a heavy darkness over the outskirts of Cedarvale, where Liam Harper and Maya Bennett made their home. It was late, and the day's events had left them both weary. The couple had just returned from an exhausting series of errands related to the ongoing threat posed by the Steel Zane Wolfies. But for a moment, they allowed themselves the hope of a peaceful night. The moonless sky cast a heavy darkness over the outskirts of their house. Nestled among tall pines and thick undergrowth, seemed quiet, almost too quiet. The soft chirping of crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves were the only sounds that accompanied them as they settled in. By all appearances, it could have been any ordinary evening in the countryside. Their house nestled among tall pines and thick undergrowth, yet the faint crackle of dried branches under heavy boots signaled a danger lurking just beyond their lawn. 6 figures emerged from the darkness, bikers in leather jackets, each emblazoned with the Steel Zane Wolfie emblem. At the head of the pack was Zane Wolf, his wiry frame contrasting with the fierce determination in his eye. Yet the faint crackle of dried branches under heavy boots, he gestured silently, directing his men to fan out and approach the property. The thick vegetation surrounding the house offered perfect cover, allowing them to sneak closer without being detected. One of them hefted a crowbar, another brandished a tire iron, while Zane Wolf himself carried a small jerry can of gasoline. He gestured silently, directing his men to fan out and approach. In choreographed aggression, the group spread out. One biker crept along the side of the house, peering through windows. Another aimed a flashlight at the truck parked in the driveway, a sturdy pickup that belonged to Ethan. In choreographed aggression, the group spread out. One biker without hesitation, 2 bikers smashed its windows, then doused the interior with gasoline, the pungent smell permeating the night air. Moments later, they struck a lighter and tossed it inside, flames flaring up in an instant. Meanwhile, others kicked at the porch railing, shattering wooden planks as they moved on to break the front windows, shards of glass tinkling onto the floor inside. Without hesitation, 2 bikers smashed its windows,
Then inside, Ethan and Clara jolted awake to the deafening sound of glass breaking and the roar of flames. Clara rushed to the window, heart pounding, and saw the flicker of orange light reflecting off the tree. In the dim glow, she could make out the silhouettes of the bikers moving across the yard, their malicious intentions unmistakable. Inside, Ethan and Clara jolted awake to the deafening sound. Adrenaline coursed through her veins as she realized they were under siege. The steel vipers had come for them, and they had come prepared. Clara tore herself away from the window and sprinted to the safe where she kept her pistol. Adrenaline coursed through her veins as she realized they would. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but she forced herself to remain calm, recalling her military training. Meanwhile, Ethan grabbed his phone to call the station. He relayed the situation in brief, urgent tones: multiple attackers, property damage, a possible attempt to force entry. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but she forced herself to write. The officer on the other end promised immediate backup, though Ethan knew it could still take precious minutes for them to arrive. The house was built with practicality in mind, but it was far from a fortress. Clara and Ethan both understood that if the bikers managed to break inside, it would become a close-quarters fight. The officer on the other end promised immediate backup. With her gun in hand, Clara positioned herself behind the front door, careful to stay out of direct view of the window. She crouched low, breathing steadily, waiting for any sign that the intruders were about to make their move. A sudden crash resounded from the side of the house. With her gun in hand, Clara positioned herself behind the frame. Through the living room window, shattered but still partially intact, Clara spotted a biker with a heavy boot raised, preparing to climb inside. She took aim and fired a warning shot. The bullet splintered part of the window frame, sending him scrambling back outside with a shout. Through the living room window, shattered but still partial. In the yard, Zane Wolfe snarled orders over the crackle of burning metal from Ethan's torched truck. "Don't let them intimidate you." For a moment, the group retreated, uncertain how many people keep going. "We're getting in there." He moved quickly around the side, urging his fellow bikers to regroup. "Keep going. We're getting in there." He moved quickly around. Ethan, phone still in hand, could hear the faint wail of sirens in the distance. A small comfort, knowing backup was en route. He glanced at Clara, who met his gaze with steely determination. "I'll cover the back door," he said, nodding toward the kitchen. Ethan, phone still in hand, could hear the faint wail of "You hold them here at the front. If they split up, we can keep them from surrounding us." Clara gave a curt nod. "You hold them here at the front. If they split up, we can keep..." No sooner had he disappeared from sight than another biker tried kicking in the front door. "Be careful," she whispered, her voice taut with adrenaline. The wood splintered under the force of his heavy boots. Clara braced herself behind a small dresser she had dragged into position for added cover. The wood splintered under the force of his heavy boots. Clara's door finally gave way, swinging open to reveal the silhouette of a man lunging forward, a chain wrapped around his fist. Clara did not hesitate. She squeezed the trigger, aiming at his leg. The door finally gave way, swinging open to reveal the silhouette. The shot found its mark, and he staggered backward with a howl of pain, toppling onto the porch. Outside, the other steel vipers froze in shock at the unexpected resistance. Zane Wolfe cursed under his breath. The shot found its mark, and he staggered backward with a howl. "Damn it, fall back for now," he yelled. From the side of the house, two more bikers who had been preparing to climb in through a broken window also retreated, uncertain how to proceed without more casualties. "Damn it, fall back for now," he yelled. From the side of as they regrouped by the charred remains of the truck, Clara could see the flicker of panic in their movements. The plan had likely been to overwhelm the household quickly, but they had underestimated the resolve of its occupant. Adrenaline surged in her veins, but she kept her aim steady, scanning the yard for any sign that the bikers might try another point of entry. As they regrouped by the charred remains of the truck, Clara, meanwhile, Ethan had encountered one more biker near the back door. A lean man wearing spiked gloves. The intruder had tried to break through the window pane, but Ethan, armed with his service weapon, forced him to retreat with a warning shot that shattered the glass around his hands. Meanwhile, Ethan had encountered one more biker near the bikers swore and dashed off, following Zane Wolfe's call to fall back. Zane Wolfe, seeing that their element of surprise had failed and that they now had wounded among them,
finally raised his voice above the roar of the flames still licking at the truck. "We're not done here," he shouted, his words echoing across the yard. The bikers swore and dashed off, following Zane Wolf's call. "Next time, we won't leave empty-handed." Then he signaled for his men to withdraw. They slipped back into the shadows, revving their motorcycles once they reached the main road and disappearing into the night. "Next time, we won't leave empty-handed." Then he signaled for seconds later. The piercing siren of police cars reached the front yard. Flashing red and blue lights illuminated the scene of shattered windows, scorched metal and scorched grass. Officers poured out of their vehicles, guns drawn, but the steel Zane Wolfs had already vanished. Seconds later, the piercing siren of police cars reached the... Clara stepped out onto the porch, careful to keep her weapon lowered, and Ethan emerged from the back of the house, relief washing over them both as they realized the immediate danger had passed. Breathing hard, Ethan and Clara surveyed the damage. Broken glass littered. Clara stepped out onto the porch, careful to keep her weapon. The floors and tendrils of smoke curled into the cool night air from the remnants of their truck. It was a stark reminder that the steel Zane Wolfs would stop at nothing to maintain their grip on Cedarvale. Despite the destruction, shattered windows, charred paint, and gashes in the siding, they were grateful neither of them had been seriously injured. The floors and tendrils of smoke curled into the cool night. A few officers rushed forward, checking if they were all right. Ethan's fury was evident in the grim set of his jaw. The Zane Wolfs had escalated beyond mere intimidation. They were blatantly terrorizing anyone who dared stand against them. A few officers rushed forward, checking if they were all right. He squeezed Clara's shoulder in silent acknowledgement of her bravery. She returned a nod, eyes hardening with renewed resolve. This attack only fueled her determination to fight back. He squeezed Clara's shoulder in silent acknowledgement of he. Inside, the living room was in disarray, but there was no time to dwell on. As the glow of emergency lights danced across their broken windows, Ethan took Clara's hand. "We'll fix this," he promised, voice low but fierce. Inside, the living room was in disarray, but there was no time. "They won't get away with it." Clara, lips pressed into a tight line, agreed. She would stand with Ethan, and they would stand for Cedarvale, no matter how many battles lay ahead. "They won't get away with it." Clara, lips pressed into a tight... The audacious attack on the home of a police chief reveals just how reckless this gang has become. Who exactly are the powerful forces backing the steel Zane Wolfs? How much further will this conflict escalate? If you enjoyed this story so far, like, share, and subscribe to support this tale. That evening, Clara approached Ethan as he reviewed the police reports of the attack. The audacious attack on the home of a police chief reveals... His face was etched with frustration, but she could see the weariness in his eyes. Clara sat across from him, her voice steady but firm. "Ethan, I want to be part of this," she said. His face was etched with frustration, but she could see the wheel. Ethan looked up, startled. "Clara, no. What happened tonight was bad enough." Ethan looked up, startled. "Clara, no. What happened tonight? I can't put you in more danger." "I'm already in danger," Clara countered. "We both are." "I can't put you in more danger. I'm already in danger, Clara. And so is the entire town. You know as well as I do that the steel Zane Wolfs won't stop here." She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. "And so is the entire town. You know as well as I do that I have the training, Ethan. I know how to handle situations like this. Let me help. I have the training, Ethan. I know how to handle situations." "Clara, this isn't the same. They're reckless and unpredictable. All the more reason to fight back," she insisted. "I'm not asking for permission. They're reckless and unpredictable. All the more reason to fight. I'm telling you that I can't sit on the sidelines while this town falls apart." Ethan hesitated, torn between his fear for her safety and the logic in her argument. Finally, he nodded. "I'm telling you that I can't sit on the sidelines while this..." "All right," he said, reluctantly. "But we do this together," with Ethan's reluctant agreement. Clara wasted no time. "All right," he said, reluctantly. "But we do this together with Ethan." She retrieved her old equipment from storage, a weathered duffel bag containing essentials from her military day. Over the next few days, she immersed herself in training, regaining the sharp reflexes and discipline she had honed during her years of service. Every morning began with physical drills, and every evening ended with target practice at an old shooting range just outside town. She retrieved her old equipment from storage, a weathered duff. In the meantime, she and Ethan worked on a detailed plan to counter the Steel Zane Wolves. They pored over maps of Cedarvale, identifying key locations the gang used for their operation. Ethan shared intel gathered from his investigations, while Clara contributed tactical strategies to minimize risks and maximize their chances of success. In the meantime, she and Ethan worked on a detailed plan to... Clara also reached out to a few trusted friends in the veteran community. They listened intently as she recounted the attack, offering not only advice but also their willingness to support her efforts. One of them, a former demolitions expert, even suggested ways to fortify their home against future assault. Clara also reached out to a few trusted friends in the veteran. As the days passed, Clara's determination only grew stronger. She wasn't just preparing for battle, she was preparing to take back her town. The Steel Zane Wolves had declared war on Cedarvale, but Clara wasn't about to let them win. As the days passed, Clara's determination only grew stronger. Determined to uncover the roots of the Steel Zane Wolves' growing power, Clara reached out to an old friend from her military days, a former intelligence officer named Sam. Sam, now working in private security, had access to global intelligence networks and agreed to dig into the background of the gang that had terrorized Cedarvale. A few days later, Clara received a call. Determined to uncover the roots of the Steel Zane Wolves' grind. "You're not going to like what I found," Sam began, his voice grave. "The Steel Zane Wolves aren't acting alone. They're just a small branch of something much bigger, the Obsidian Syndicate." "You're not going to like what I found," Sam began, his voice. The name sent a chill down Clara's spine. The Obsidian Syndicate was a name she'd heard whispered during her time overseas, a shadowy international organization infamous for its stranglehold on drug and arms trafficking network. "Cedarvale isn't random," Sam explained. The name sent a chill down Clara's spine. The Obsidian Syndicate, it's strategically located near highways and railroads, making it a perfect transit point. The Zane Wolves are small-time players, but they're being used as muscle to secure this area for the Syndicate's operations. Clara processed the information, her grip tightening on the phone. "It's strategically located near highways and railroads, making So, we're not just fighting bikers," she muttered. "We're up against a global operation." "Exactly," Sam said. "So, we're not just fighting bikers," she muttered.
You're up against...
"And they don't tolerate failure. If you push too hard, they'll send reinforcements. This isn't just about control, it's about survival for them, and they don't tolerate failure. If you push too hard, Sam's warning was clear, but Clara's resolve only deepened. She thanked him for his help, promising to keep him updated. Hanging up, she immediately shared the information with Ethan. Sam's warning was clear, but Clara's resolve only deepened. "We're not just dealing with Derek Stone and his crew," she said. "We're dealing with the Syndicate behind them. This is bigger than we thought. We're not just dealing with Derek Stone and his crew." She said. Through local records and a closer look at the town's politics, they began to suspect that Mayor Bennett, Cedarvale's seemingly affable leader, wasn't as innocent as he appeared. Several witnesses, speaking off the record, suggested that Bennett had been quietly approving permits and turning a blind eye to suspicious activities linked to the Steel Zane Wolves. As Clara and Ethan pieced together the intelligence, another Clara and Ethan also found discrepancies in the town's budget, with funds mysteriously allocated to projects that never materialized. When pressed, some locals hinted that Bennett had received bribes in exchange for halting police investigations and ensuring the Zane Wolves could operate without interference. "It makes sense," Ethan said, grimly. Clara and Ethan also found discrepancies in the town's budget. They needed someone in power to smooth things over and keep us distracted. Bennett's position made him the perfect ally for the Syndicate. They needed someone in power to smooth things over and keep Clara front. And he sold out the town for what? Money and a false sense of control. Her disgust was evident, but it also fueled her determination. "We need to expose him." Clara frowned. "And he sold out the town for what? Money and if we take down Bennett, we cut off one of their biggest enablers." The weight of what they were facing began to sink in. The Steel Zane Wolves were just the surface of a much deeper problem. A global criminal organization operating with local political protection. If we take down Bennett, we cut off one of their biggest enablers. It wasn't just about Cedarvale anymore. If they didn't act decisively,
The town would become another forgotten victim of the syndicate's sprawling empire. "We're not backing down," Clara said, firmly, her voice cutting through the tension in their living room. It wasn't just about Cedarvale anymore. If they didn't act if anything, this makes it even more important to fight. Ethan nodded, his jaw set with determination. "We'll need a plan, something airtight. If anything, this makes it even more important to fight. Ethan, this isn't just about taking down the Zane Wolves. We need to dismantle their entire operation, starting with Bennett." They spent hours outlining their next steps, mapping out potential locations tied to the syndicate's activities, and identifying allies they could trust. This isn't just about taking down the Zane Wolves. Clara also reached out to her veteran network again, seeking advice and potential support for what was shaping up to be a larger battle than either of them had anticipated. "We'll expose them," Ethan said, his voice steady. "All of them." Clara also reached out to her veteran network again, seeking the Zane Wolves, the Syndicate, and Bennett. "They think they own this town, but they're about to find out just how wrong they are." Clara nodded. "The Zane Wolves, the Syndicate, and Bennett. They think we stand for Cedarvale. No matter how big the fight gets." The attack on their home left no room for doubt. "We stand for Cedarvale, no matter how big the fight gets." Steel Zane Wolves were a dangerous, reckless gang that needed to be dismantled immediately. For Ethan, the escalation was the tipping point. They could no longer afford to play defense. Steel Zane Wolves were a dangerous, reckless gang that needed. After nights spent reviewing intel gathered from Clara's contacts in their own investigations, they uncovered a critical piece of information. The Steel Zane Wolves frequently used an abandoned steel mill just outside Cedarvale as a hub for their illegal activities. The mill, isolated and surrounded by dense woods, was perfect for storing contraband and hosting clandestine meetings. After nights spent reviewing intel gathered from Clara's contact, Clara and Ethan saw an opportunity. They decided to use the steel mill as the setting for an elaborate trap. Through carefully planted misinformation, they would let it leak that the mill now housed evidence tying the Steel Zane Wolves to larger criminal operations. Evidence that could bring the gang and their backers down for good. Clara and Ethan saw an opportunity. They decided to use knowing the gang's violent tendencies, they expected a swift and aggressive response. The plan was risky, but it was their best shot at catching the Zane Wolves red-handed. Ethan took charge of organizing the operation, while Clara, with her military background, began crafting the tactical detail. Knowing the gang's violent tendencies, they expected a swift. Their shared determination to protect Cedarvale fueled their efforts, even as they acknowledged the danger ahead. This wasn't just about justice, it was about reclaiming their town from the grip of fear. As the plan took shape, Clara's military training became invaluable. Their shared determination to protect Cedarvale fueled their. Working closely with Ethan, she devised a tactical approach to maximize their advantage and ensure everyone's safety. Her experience in combat zones had taught her the importance of preparation and positioning, and she meticulously outlined the operations framework. The first priority was positioning. Working closely with Ethan, she devised a tactical approach. Clara recommended splitting the team into 3 groups, one to cover the main entrance, another to guard potential escape routes, and a third to hold positions inside the mill itself. The structure's elevated catwalks and observation points provided excellent vantage points, so Clara assigned skilled marksmen to those positions, ensuring they could monitor the entire area. To further lure the Steel Zane Wolves into their trap, Clara and Ethan created a fake evidence cache. Clara recommended splitting the team into 3 groups, one using old storage crates and file boxes. They staged a convincing display of incriminating materials in one of the steel mill's central room. The area was designed to appear accessible, drawing the gang deeper into the mill before the ambush began. Clara also advised on equipment. Using old storage crates and file boxes, they staged a Each officer was equipped with the tools necessary for both offensive and defensive tactics, from tactical shields to non-lethal deterrent. To counter potential ambushes, Clara developed a contingency plan, ensuring every team knew how to regroup and respond under pressure. Her attention to detail reassured the officers, many of whom had never faced an operation of this scale. Each officer was equipped with the tools necessary for both. By the time the plan was finalized, Clara had solidified her role not just as a participant, but as a key strategist. Her expertise and calm under pressure inspired confidence among the team, who trusted her to guide them through what was sure to be a tense and dangerous mission. Ethan called in his best officers for the operation, carefully selecting those with the skills and temperament needed for such a high-stakes ambush. By the time the plan was finalized, Clara had solidified her. Among them were sharp-eyed snipers, swift, tactical responders, and officers with years of experience handling high-pressure situations. Each team member was thoroughly briefed on their roles and the risks involved. This wasn't just another raid, it was a coordinated strike against a gang notorious for their violence. Among them were sharp-eyed snipers, swift, tactical responder. Clara, unwilling to stay on the sidelines, volunteered to be part of the lead team alongside Ethan. Her presence on the ground allowed her to oversee the execution of the plan and make real-time adjustments as needed. The team appreciated her hands-on approach, knowing she had the skills and experience to back up her decision. Clara, unwilling to stay on the sidelines, volunteered to ensure the operation's success. Ethan secured advanced equipment. Surveillance drones hovered discreetly above the mill, providing live footage of the area. Hidden cameras were installed inside the structure, giving the team full visibility of the gang's movements once they enter. To ensure the operation's success, Ethan secured advanced communication channels were carefully tested to avoid interference, and backup units were stationed nearby in case of unexpected development. As the final preparations were made, Clara and Ethan stood together at the operations command center, reviewing every detail one last time. The stakes were high, but so was their determination. Communication channels were carefully tested to avoid This was their chance to strike a decisive blow against the Steel Vipers and the larger network pulling their strings. Failure wasn't an option. Together, they resolved to see the mission through, no matter what it took. This was their chance to strike a decisive blow against the abandoned steel mill loomed large against the midnight sky, a jagged monument of rusted beams and crumbling concrete. Bright headlights cut through the darkness as 15 armed bikers, led by Derek Stone, rumbled onto the property. Their motorcycles and a couple of battered trucks fanned out to illuminate the mill's towering walls. The abandoned steel mill loomed large against the midnight sun. Among them stood Nina Delgado, the Obsidian Syndicate's field operative, accompanied by a cadre of professional gunmen. She scanned the foreboding structure, taking in the eerie silence that weighed on the stale air. "Spread out," Nina ordered quietly, her tone cold and precise. Among them stood Nina Delgado, the Obsidian Syndicate's field to find that evidence. "If it's here, I want it in my hands before sunrise." Derek Stone, itching for a fight, merely nodded. "Find that evidence. If it's here, I want it in my hands before." He signaled his crew to follow Nina's lead. Motor oil and the faint smell of gunpowder hung in the air as the bikers moved deeper into the mill, flashlights sweeping across every rusted platform and corridor in search of the incriminating material they'd heard was stashed here. Unbeknownst to them, Maya Bennett watched from a concealed vantage point, her heart pounding with anticipation. He signaled his crew to follow Nina's lead. Motor oil and through night vision binoculars, she tracked Derek Stone's every step. Nearby, officers in black tactical gear held their breath, waiting for Clara's signal. Under her command, they had set up a painstaking ambush, carefully placed squads, hidden spotlights, and well-planned escape route blockades. Through night vision binoculars, she tracked Derek Stone's. "Not yet," she whispered into her headset, as a few of the bikers ventured into the main hall. Her gloved hand tightened around her rifle's grip. She wanted them fully committed deep inside the mill before springing the trap. Together, they braced for the inevitable clash that would erupt once the Steel Vipers discovered they had walked into a web spun by Cedarvale's determined defenders. The tension among the officers rose with every second. "Ethan," when the bikers and Nina's gunmen pushed further into the heart of the steel mill, Clara decided the moment had arrived. With a swift motion, she flipped a switch that signaled the officers stationed along the catwalks. In an instant, bright floodlights blazed to life, banishing the shadows and forcing the intruders to shield their eyes. When the bikers and Nina's gunmen pushed further into the go, 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 Clara's voice crackled over the radio. From hidden alcoves and behind massive steel pillars, the police sprang into action. Gunfire erupted, a volley of warning shots aimed at the concrete floor and rusted metal walls. "Go, go, go." Clara's voice crackled over the radio. From hid sparks flew as bullets ricocheted, and the chaotic chorus of shouted orders, revving engines, and clattering footsteps filled the cavernous space. Ethan, standing at the center of the mill behind a makeshift barricade, delivered crisp commands into his radio. "Team Alpha, hold the main entrance." Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted, and the chaotic chorus of Beta, cover the south exit. "Charlie, move in and sweep the lower levels." Officers responded with acknowledgments, their voices taut with adrenaline. "Beta, cover the south exit." "Charlie, move in and sweep the
The Steel Vipers found themselves caught off guard. Many tried to dash back to their bikes, but the carefully laid plan had them pinned. Cops with riot shields advanced along the flanks, methodically driving the bikers away from their vehicle. The Steel Vipers found themselves caught off guard. Many tried. A few of Derek Stone's men attempted a counteroffensive. One hurled a cocktail that shattered against a distant wall, its flames licking at the dusty floor. Another biker fired a pistol wildly at the silhouettes of officers, but training and superior coordination gave the police the upper hand. A few of Derek Stone's men attempted a counteroffensive. Meanwhile, Nina Delgado, still controlling her own squad of professional gunmen, reacted with swift determination. "Form a perimeter," she barked. Her mercenaries fanned out, returning fire with calculated precision, forcing some of Ethan's team to seek cover behind rusted crates and defunct machinery. Meanwhile, Nina Delgado, still controlling her own squad from her elevated position, Clara kept watch over the whole scene. She saw a cluster of bikers breaking off to escape through a side corridor. Speaking into her headset, she dispatched a squad to enter. From her elevated position, Clara kept watch over the whole scene. The desperate revel of a motorcycle engine echoed as one of the Steel Vipers tried to drive through a gap in the blockade, but an officer threw a spike strip onto the path. Tires screeched, rubber shredded, and the bike skidded into a pile of twisted metal. Though outnumbered, the law enforcement team had the advantage of strategy and the element of surprise. The desperate rev of a motorcycle engine echoed as one of the bright lights made it hard for them to hide, while the police moved with practiced efficiency, clearing each section of the mill as they advanced. Adrenaline surged through Clara. Another round of gunfire barked through the cavernous space. She observed every movement, called out positions, and reassured her teams. Even amid the bedlam, her mind remained focused. She spotted Ethan directing the push forward, his figure outlined by the glare of floodlight. She observed every movement, called out positions, and the plan was working. The Steel Vipers were disoriented, and Clara descended from her observation post, moving swiftly along a metal walkway to join the fray. From her higher vantage, she had caught sight of Nina Delgado slipping away from the central chaos. Nina, cool-headed and efficient, was guiding two of her mercenaries deeper into the mill's labyrinth of corridors, presumably looking for an alternate exit, or possibly searching for the evidence. Clara descended from her observation post, moving swiftly determined to prevent Nina from escaping. Clara radioed for two officers to cover her flank and took off in pursuit. The maze of corridors was dimly lit, with only the flicker of overhead lights and the occasional flash of muzzle fire to illuminate the path. Each step echoed ominously on the metal floor. Determined to prevent Nina from escaping, Clara radioed for rounding a corner. Clara caught sight of Nina's group. One of Nina's men fired a burst from his submachine gun, forcing Clara to dive behind a piece of abandoned machinery. Bullets ricocheted, showering sparks into the gloom. Rounding a corner, Clara caught sight of Nina's group. Clara's heart pounded, but she drew on her military discipline to remain calm. She gestured for her backup to split off, flanking the mercenaries on both sides. "Keep them busy," Clara whispered into her mind. Clara's heart pounded, but she drew on her military discipline. The officers responded, peppering the area with suppressing fire. Nina's second mercenary attempted to push forward, but Clara emerged from cover, her rifle at the ready. A short, controlled burst of gunfire from Clara dropped him before he could return fire. The officers responded, peppering the area with suppressing. Nina herself was no novice. She ducked into a side passage, quickly reloading her handgun. Clara motioned for her officers to secure the wounded mercenaries and pressed onward. Nina herself was no novice. She ducked into a side passage, in a narrow hallway leading to an old storage area. Nina suddenly appeared. She fired twice at Clara, forcing her to drop to the ground. The bullets slammed into the wall behind her. In a narrow hallway leading to an old storage area, Nina refusing to be pinned down, Clara launched herself into a roll, coming up in a kneeling position. She squeezed the trigger, aiming just above Nina's shoulder. Nina jerked back, giving Clara the opening she needed. Refusing to be pinned down, Clara launched herself into a roll. In a swift maneuver, Clara closed the distance, landing a solid strike to Nina's arm. The gun flew from Nina's grip, skittering across the floor. Though adept at combat, Nina found herself outmatched by Clara's agility and training. In a swift maneuver, Clara closed the distance,
landing Clara disarmed her in a fluid motion, twisting her arm behind her back. Nina let out a hiss of pain, struggling in vain to break free. With practiced efficiency, Clara slapped a pair of handcuffs around the syndicate operative's wrists. Clara disarmed her in a fluid motion, twisting her arm behind. "You're done," Clara said, voice cold. Nina glared daggers, her eyes filled with contempt. "You have no idea," she spat, "what you've started." "You're done," Clara said, voice cold. Nina glared daggers. Clara ignored her venomous remark, signaling an officer to secure Nina. Whatever secrets she held, they would soon be revealed under proper interrogation. While Clara was busy apprehending Nina, Ethan found himself confronting Derek Stone in the vast central area of the steel mill. Clara ignored her venomous remark, signaling an officer to sirens, gunfire, and shouted commands formed a deafening backdrop to their encounter. Derek Stone, stripped of his usual advantage of surprise, was still a formidable presence. Machinery once used to forge metal now formed a labyrinth. Muscles coiled beneath his leather jacket, and a savage light burned in his eyes. When he caught sight of Ethan, he sneered. "So this was your plan all along," he growled. Muscles coiled beneath his leather jacket, and a savage light bait us with fake evidence. "Corner us like rats." Ethan leveled his sidearm. "Your reign ends tonight," he said evenly, scanning the area around them. "Bait us with fake evidence. Corner us like rats." Ethan leveled test, but Derek Stone showed no intention of surrendering peacefully. He lunged forward, swinging his arm in a wide arc. The motion was so abrupt that Ethan barely managed to sidestep it. But Derek Stone showed no intention of surrendering peaceful. Derek Stone's fist grazed Ethan's shoulder, sending a jolt of pain down his arm. Ethan fired a warning shot, hoping to force Derek Stone to stand down. The bullet struck a pile of metal scraps, ringing out through the hall. Derek Stone's fist grazed Ethan's shoulder, sending a jolt of. Derek Stone snarled, his rage boiling over as he rushed forward. Ethan's grip tightened on his weapon, but his mind flashed back to the diner, the moment this brute had struck Clara, his wife, without hesitation or remorse. The memory ignited a fire in him, sharpening his resolve. Derek Stone snarled, his rage boiling over as he rushed forward. This fight wasn't about firepower. It was personal. With deliberate resolve, Ethan lowered his weapon and stepped forward, fists clenched. "Let's settle this," he said, his voice calm but edged with determination. This fight wasn't about firepower. It was personal. With deliberate. Derek Stone hesitated for a moment, then grinned savagely, recognizing the challenge. Finally, he growled, cracking his knuckles as he prepared to face Ethan in a brutal one-on-one fight. The two men clashed, exchanging powerful blows. Derek Stone hesitated for a moment, then grinned savagely. Derek Stone had brute strength, honed from years of fighting and leading the Steel Zane Wolves. Ethan, on the other hand, had training and discipline, traits that allowed him to gauge every strike. He landed a sharp elbow to Derek Stone's ribs, making the biker grunt in pain. Derek Stone had brute strength, honed from years of fighting. Derek Stone retaliated with a powerful uppercut, catching Ethan in the jaw and nearly knocking him to the ground. Ethan's mind raced. He could taste blood on his lip, and a dull ache spread through his jaw. Derek Stone retaliated with a powerful uppercut, catching Ethan. Derek Stone was relentless, fueled by anger and a wounded ego. "You think you can humiliate me?" Derek Stone spat, landing another hit to Ethan's side that drove the air from his lungs. Stumbling back, Ethan refused to capitulate. Derek Stone was relentless, fueled by anger and a wounded ego. Summoning his last reserves of energy, he lunged back at Derek Stone. The men locked arms in a brutal grapple. His vision blurred momentarily, but he steadied himself. For a moment, they looked evenly matched, each vying for control. Then Ethan shifted his weight and slipped out of Derek Stone's hold, sweeping the biker's leg out from under him. Derek Stone crashed onto the concrete floor, cursing. For a moment, they looked evenly matched, each vying for control. Seeing his chance, Ethan pinned him down, ignoring the throbbing pain in his own body. Derek Stone resisted violently, thrashing and swinging fists, but Ethan held on. The scuffle continued until Ethan delivered a hard punch straight to Derek Stone's temple. Seeing his chance, Ethan pinned him down, ignoring the throb. Derek Stone's resistance faltered, his head snapping back against the ground. Ethan pressed his forearm against Derek Stone's chest to keep him from surging back up. Breathing heavily, Ethan hissed, "That's for my wife." Derek Stone's resistance faltered, his head snapping back again. Before Derek Stone could recover, Ethan retrieved his cuffs from a pouch on his belt and snapped them around the gang leader's wrists. Derek Stone tried to snarl another insult, but all that emerged was a shaky exhale. "It's over," Ethan said, voice hoarse. Before Derek Stone could recover, Ethan retrieved his cuffs. "Seal isn't yours anymore." With Derek Stone subdued in the mill center and Nina Delgado secured in the corridors, the remaining Steel Zane Wolves found themselves leaderless and outmaneuvered. Their brief attempts to continue fighting crumbled when word spread that Derek Stone had been taken down. "Seal isn't yours anymore." With Derek Stone subdued in the one by one, they dropped their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. The professional gunman Nina had brought along offered little resistance. Once they realized their tactical advantage was gone and that they were heavily outnumbered, officers swiftly moved through the facility, disarming each biker and ordering them to lie face down on the floor. One by one, they dropped their weapons and raised their hand. The rattle of handcuffs clicking shut filled the air. Broken machinery, scattered bullet casings, and the acrid smell of spent gunpowder set a grim stage. Yet, in that chaos, there was a sense of triumph, hard-won and deeply felt. The rattle of handcuffs clicking shut filled the air. Broken Nina Delgado, bound and furious, cast a venomous glare at Clara as she was escorted through the shadows of the mill. "The Obsidian Syndicate will never let this stand," she warned, her voice low and bitter. "You've made enemies far more powerful than you can imagine." Nina Delgado, bound and furious, cast a venomous glare at Clara. Clara met her gaze without flinching. "Then we'll be ready," she replied simply. Nearby, Ethan forced Derek Stone to his feet. Clara met her gaze without flinching. "Then we'll be ready." "See." The biker chief glared back, sweat dripping from his brow, face contorted with rage and exhaustion. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning," he growled, but Ethan merely tightened his grip on Derek Stone's cuffed arms, leading him past the assembled police officers. The biker chief glared back, sweat dripping from his brow. Outside, the moonlit compound was flooded with the flashing lights of patrol cars. Officers were already cataloging confiscated weapons and contraband. A sense of relief rippled through the team, though they knew the night's work was only part of a larger struggle. Outside, the moonlit compound was flooded with the flashing. Clara and Ethan stood side by side, watching as the bikers were loaded into police van. Despite their bruises and the lingering sting of fresh wounds, they allowed themselves a moment of pride. Cedarvale had taken a stand. Clara and Ethan stood side by side, watching as the bikers as Nina and Derek Stone were driven away into the night. Clara couldn't help but wonder what new challenges lay ahead. Still, her resolve remained unshaken. If the Obsidian Syndicate wanted a fight, they now knew precisely whom they were up against. As Nina and Derek Stone were driven away into the night, like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Your support means the world to us. As the dust settled over the steel mill, the scale of the operation's success became clear. The majority of the Steel Vipers had been subdued and cuffed, their weapons and bikes abandoned in the chaos of the ambush. Like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Your officers moved swiftly, cataloging the scene and securing the mountain of evidence left in the gang's wake. Ethan and Clara joined their team in sweeping the mill, uncovering a staggering cache of contraband, crates of illegal drugs, stacks of unregistered firearms, and documents detailing supply routes and transactions with the Obsidian Syndicate. Derek Stone, bloodied and bruised from his fight with Ethan, was hauled to his feet and shackled. Officers moved swiftly, cataloging the scene and securing. He sneered defiantly but couldn't mask the flicker of defeat in his eye. Nina Delgado, her calm exterior shattered by her capture, shot daggers at Clara as officers led her out of the building. "This isn't over," she spat, but Clara remained stoic, silently vowing to see this through to the end. He sneered defiantly but couldn't mask the flicker of defeat. The police team worked tirelessly to secure the area, ensuring every piece of evidence was documented and transported back to the station. The steel mill, once a stronghold of criminal operations, was now a scene of triumph for Cedarvale's defenders. As the last of the bikers were loaded into police vans and driven away, Clara and Ethan exchanged a look, part relief, part determination. The police team worked tirelessly to secure the area, ensuring they had struck a significant blow. but they both knew the fight wasn't over. Among the documents seized at the mill was the final piece of the puzzle. Evidence tying Mayor Bennett directly to the Steelzane Wolves and the Obsidian Syndicate. Payment ledgers and signed approvals for suspicious permits painted a damning picture of corruption. They had struck a significant blow, but they both knew the fight. Ethan wasted no time. Armed with a warrant, he and his team confronted the mayor at his office the following morning. Bennett initially tried to feign innocence, but the mountain of evidence left no room for denial. Ethan wasted no time. Armed with a warrant, he and his team, his polished demeanor crumbled under the weight of his exposed dealings. As officers placed him under arrest, murmurs spread through the town. For too long, Bennett had projected an image of leadership and integrity, but now his true colors were on full display. His polished demeanor crumbled under the weight of his expos. With Bennett's arrest, Cedarvale began to breathe easier. The townspeople, who had suffered silently under the shadow of fear and corruption, started to see a glimmer of hope. The capture of both the Steelzane Wolves and their enablers signaled a turning point, one that brought the promise of rebuilding and reclaiming the peace they had once enjoyed. With Bennett's arrest, Cedarvale began to breathe easier. The weeks following the takedown of the Steelzane Wolves and the arrest of Mayor Bennett, Cedarvale began to reclaim its lost serenity. The oppressive fear that had gripped the small town lifted, and its residents slowly ventured back into the open with newfound confidence. The streets, once eerily quiet, began to buzz with life again. In the weeks following the takedown of the Steelzane Wolves, neighbors who had once kept their heads down to avoid unwanted attention now greeted each other warmly, their conversations laced with hope for a brighter future. Shuttered storefronts, long abandoned due to extortion and threats, reopened their doors. The hardware store on Main Street, which had been vandalized by the bikers, proudly displayed a fresh coat of paint and new inventory. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down to avoid unwanted families strolled along the sidewalks, enjoying the uncharacteristically warm autumn afternoon. Most heartwarming of all, children began to play outside once more, riding their bikes, skipping rope and filling the air with the sound of laughter that had been missing for too long. Cedarvale wasn't just healing, it was thriving. Families strolled along the sidewalks, enjoying the The town's resilience, bolstered by Clara and Ethan's efforts, became a point of pride for everyone. It was a collective realization that together, they had faced down their fears and emerged strong. For the first time in years, Cedarvale felt like home again. The town's resilience, bolstered by Clara and Ethan's effort. Sophie's Diner, the site of the infamous first confrontation between Clara and Derek Stone, underwent a complete transformation thanks to the town's collective effort. The broken windows were replaced, the chipped walls repainted, and new booths installed. Residents contributed time, money, and materials, seeing the diner as more than just a restaurant. It was a symbol of the town's resilience. Sophie's Diner, the site of the infamous first confrontation. Inside, Sophie hung a framed photo of Clara, capturing her standing proudly in her military jacket. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "Maya Bennett, the hero of Cedarvale." Sophie often gestured to it with pride, sharing stories of Clara's bravery with anyone who asked. Inside, Sophie hung a framed photo of Clara, capturing her The diner became a hub of celebration and hope, its tables filled with laughter and shared dreams of a brighter future. It was where the community came together to mark their victory, celebrate their unity, and discuss the promising days that lay ahead for Cedarvale. Sitting calmly in the dimly lit interrogation room, Nina Delgado exuded an unsettling air of composure. The diner became a hub of celebration and hope, its tables filled. Her hands were cuffed, but her confidence remained unshaken as she stared across the table at Ethan and Clara. When questioned about the Obsidian Syndicate, Nina didn't deny its existence. Instead, she offered a chilling revelation. Her hands were cuffed, but her confidence remained unshaken. "You think this is over?" she said, her voice low and sharp. Cedarvale was nothing more than a blip on their radar, a convenient waypoint for their operation. "You've disrupted a fraction of what they control, but the Syndicate is far bigger than you realize." "You think this is over?" she said, her voice low and sharp. Clara's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent, letting Nina continue. "You've cut off a single branch from a tree that stretches across continents," Nina added, her eyes narrowing. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've stirred the hive, and they won't take this lightly." Clara's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent, letting Nina They'll come back, and next time it won't just be bikers. Ethan leaned forward, his voice steady but firm. Let them come. They'll come back, and next time it won't just be bikers. Ethan leaned forward. Nina smirked, leaning back in her chair. You're brave, she said. We'll be ready. Nina smirked, leaning back in her chair. You brave, but bravery won't save you when they decide to make an example of this town. Nina's words hung heavily in the air as Clara and Ethan left the room. But bravery won't save you when they decide to make an example of. They both understood the gravity of the situation. The syndicate was not finished, and Cedarvale's temporary peace could be shattered at any moment. We'll need more than just the local department for this, Ethan admitted, already considering strategies for involving state and federal agencies. Clara nodded, her expression resolute. They both understood the gravity of the situation. The Cindy, and we'll need to stay vigilant. They'll come for us eventually. Together, they resolved to prepare Cedarvale for whatever lay ahead. And we'll need to stay vigilant. They'll come for us eventually. The battle against the syndicate had only just begun, but they were determined to see it through. After everything they had endured, the bond between Clara and Ethan grew stronger than ever. They were not just husband and wife, they were a team, united by their shared mission to protect Cedarvale. The battle against the syndicate had only just begun, but each had seen the other's strength and resolve in the face of danger, and their mutual respect deepened with every step of the journey. Ethan often found himself in awe of Clara's courage and determination. I don't know how you do it, he admitted one quiet evening as they sat together in their living room. Each had seen the other's strength and resolve in the face of. You faced all of this without hesitation. Clara smiled softly, placing her hand on his. I learned it from you, she said. You faced all of this without hesitation. Clara smiled softly. You've always led with strength and calm, even when things seemed impossible. Ethan shook his head, his voice filled with gratitude. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You've always led with strength and calm, even when things seemed. Clara leaned closer, her voice steady but warm. We didn't do it alone. We did it together. Clara leaned closer, her voice steady but warm. We didn't do. Their love and trust became the foundation of their commitment to Cedarvale. Together, they vowed to protect the town and its people, no matter what threats lay ahead. The challenges had forged them into an even stronger partnership, ready to face the future as one. Their love and trust became the foundation of their commitment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara and Ethan sat on their front porch, gazing out over the peaceful streets of Cedarvale. The stillness of the moment was stark contrast to the chaos they had faced, but they both knew it was only a temporary reprieve. Clara rested her hand on the pistol beside her, while Ethan checked his radio, ensuring everything was in place. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara and Ethan sat on. Ethan broke the silence with a smile. Tomorrow you officially join the police force. This town needs someone like you. Ethan broke the silence with a smile. Tomorrow you official. Clara returned his smile, her eyes sparkling. Fine, but don't forget you're still the boss. Clara returned his smile, her eyes sparkling. Fine, but don't